Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of JJ Talks. My name is Jonah, and I am here again with my co-host Josh. How you doing?
I am doing fantastic. How about you? How's your weekend going?
Okay, going so far so good. Work tomorrow, but looking forward to being able to talk more football.
I'm looking forward to play you in Madden more and get my ass kicked.
uh, I don't know. My team is definitely not nearly as good as it usually is, but hey, you
Look
never.
over you. I throw interceptions like hotcakes.
Yeah, well, we'll see how interceptions go with some of these quarterbacks we're about to talk about. Starting off with an interesting quarterback situation. We're going to be talking about the NFC North, and going through all the offseason additions that they went through, free agency, the draft, any questions we have about the team, and then go through some predictions. And we're going to start off with the Chicago Bears, who had an interesting offseason. I think the biggest addition that most would note that they made is trading for Nick Foles from the Jaguars to bring in, some quarterback competition for Mitchell Trubisky. And I just kind of want to throw it to you. What do you think about, that trade?
I honestly love it. I know you're not Nick Foles, and I gotta be honest, I'm not too high either, but I think it's an obvious upgrade from Trubisky. And if things don't play out for Trubisky, after the first couple of weeks and looking at the schedule, it's pretty tough. I can definitely see Nick Foles coming in and still giving them the push to at least get that seventh wild card spot. Um, and it also helped the the Jaguars out too because uh, they need to see what they have in Gardner Minshew. I think it was a win-win either side, and it's a short contract and not a lot of money because you still have Mr. Trubisky still on his rookie deal. They didn't pick up his fifth option, so all around, I think it was great. And in the case that they still want to make that playoff push, they have a quarterback that has that experience to uh, perform under those kind of circumstances. So either way, win-win. And if Nick Foles doesn't work out, the contract isn't bad, and they can still move on from Nick Foles and Mitch Trubisky, whenever need be.
I'm probably a bit more on the negative side with the trade. I'm not a big fan of it. Um, for one, I'm just not a big fan of Nick Foles. I think he's more of a glorified backup than anything. I don't really think he's a starter in this league. And I think that can be seen how I think he had 1 year where he made the Pro Bowl and in like 2013, 2015, somewhere around there.
Mm-hmm.
And then he had obviously the more recent year with the Eagles coming in after Carson Wentz got hurt and played great. But I just think,
Not just great, Super Bowl MVP.
yes. But I think that's more of a blip than anything. I mean, people forget that when he came in for the Jags, before he got hurt, he went like 0-3 and played extremely poorly. So I don't know. I think when you look at Trubisky and you look at Foles, I don't think there's much of an upgrade. I think Foles might have the higher floor. Like, I think he won't lose you games, but I think
Mm-hmm.
Trubisky's athleticism could win you more. So I think that kind of balances it out. Either way, I think there's a lot more problems outside the quarterback position. I think we could both agree on that.
Yeah.
I think they did not improve the O line at all. And if you look, free agency, they didn't really do anything for the O line. In the draft, they waited until like the seventh round to get O line help. And I mean, we all know seventh rounders. If you get one that contributes, that's great, but the odds are not in their favor. So, I mean, I don't think it's necessarily a bad trade. It's like I don't think they're going to lose the trade by any means. And you gave up a fourth round pick. If anything, I think the Jaguars probably won it. You know, whether you think Gardner
Oh yeah, they
Minshew
definitely
is,
won it given their situation, but
yeah,
you got a pretty good quarterback, and if anything, he's on the same level as the guy you already have. So you're not really losing.
yeah. But I guess that's where I have the issue. If you're getting a guy, I don't think Foles is pretty good. I don't even think Foles is good. I think he's average. I think Trubisky is average. And I think if you're bringing in a guy that's equal to that, well, all you're doing is putting on his entire, contract. And I mean, he's only got $21 million in guaranteed, but that's still $21 million in guaranteed money you have to pay him. So, I mean, we'll see if he comes in and plays like he did with the late with the Eagles, then call me stupid. That it'll work out great for them. But I don't frankly see it.
Mitch or Nick? Just overall, who's better?
I see. I don't see one. I think they're almost equal. I mean, if I have to go like straight, if you're putting a guy into the game and I need one drive and I need you to get me down the field and I need to get in field goal range, I'm probably gonna bet on Trubisky and his athleticism.
That's where I'm going to differ with you there, because if the offseason was any different, if they added any pieces to the O-line or even drafted young at the O-line, then I'd agree with you. But the thing is, the O-line is still the same as it was last year, and we already saw what that was. I just think that bringing in Nick Foles, who is clearly a better passer than Mitch is, he's definitely not as athletic, but he's quite a better passer, and he's worked with Matt Nagy before. He knows that system. He's worked with him in 2012 when he was with the Eagles, and then whenever Nagy was the offensive coordinator with the Chiefs in 2016. I just think that it's just the obvious better move for them. And we've already seen Mitch, even though he's still athletic, behind that O-line, which is crap, and it's not going to look any different this year. I think your better option is just to go with Nick, because you've already seen Mitch of that, and I don't think you're getting anything different from that. So you might as well try something else.
So you think a less athletic and a less mobile quarterback behind that O-line is going to be doing better?
Yeah, because I think he's going to be a better passer, and I think it's a better NFL mind than Mr. Trubisky does, and he has more experience, and not only just like regular season experience, he can perform under that kind of pressure. And I believe that he's going to want. He's not going to want it. He's going to run the same kind of system that Nagy wants to run, and Nagy won't have to like formulate a different scheme around Mr. Trubisky's needs. When we've seen this happen, we saw the smoke and mirrors work once, and then we've seen it last year. It didn't translate. Everyone figured it out, and they had nothing to answer with. So I think you're better off just going with who you've known before. You got a better passer. He fits your scheme better. I think it's overall better of Nick.
Well, I guess we'll see. I mean, I think either way, they still have a quarterback issue. I don't think, I think next year the Bears are going to have to find a new quarterback one way or another. Because I think just looking at their, there's so many questions on that team that I think they have a lot of issues even outside the quarterback position. And as much as I hate it, I like Matt Nagy as a coach, but I kind of think he's on the hot seat at this point, because I think with the defense that they have, an easy top 10 defense, potential top 5 defense, they have just not – the offense has not been able to complement the defense really at all. And they didn't improve the O-line. And we'll see how much Nick Foles can come in. And if he does come in and start, how much of an improvement that is. And if the offense doesn't improve, and which leads to, that team overall not improving, because they're in a tough division. You got the Packers, you've got the Vikings, you have an improved Lions team. If they end up third or even fourth in the division, I think Matt Nagy might have to be looking for a new job.
You think so? Because isn't this his third season as the head coach? Am I correct?
I believe so.
Okay, so we have the first season. They go into playoffs. They ultimately lose to the double doink. Second season was a clear downgrade. So why in the third season would you get cold feet on him when you trust him? If anything, I think the GM is more on the hot seat than Nagy is. because the GM was the one that wanted Trubisky over a Patrick Mahomes over Deshaun Watson. If anything, I think the GM's on the hot seat. I think Nagy is still fine for right now.
I think I definitely agree with the GM. I mean, I think the lack of moves to improve the other holes in the offense, or I guess, well, yes, the offense, but the team in general is a big issue. But with Nagy, I think it comes down to, I mean, really just how this offense performs. And at the very minimum, I'm fairly certain he's the one calling plays. And some of the play calling, especially last year, has been atrocious. I mean, like, I don't care if you have Foles or Trubisky in there. Neither of them should be throwing 50-plus passes a game, which happened in one of them. So if they don't have a focus on running the ball, which I think we can both agree that needs to be their bread and butter, is the run game with Montgomery in the backfield. If things just don't improve, I'm not saying he'll get cut automatically, but I definitely think if they don't show any signs of life by the end of the season, I definitely could see him on the hot seat, because one way or another, the NFL is becoming it's a record league. I mean, you got to have results. And if they don't get positive results, I could see Nagy, at least that seat, getting a bit warmer.
Well, what do you think of the additions of Cole Kmet and Jimmy Graham? Hauling all the tight ends in the league as possible.
I'm not necessarily against the Cole Kmet one. I think Cole Kmet was the best tight end in the draft. They got him in the second round. Obviously, they didn't have a first-round pick. So, I mean, that's fine. And if you are trying to, move to Nick Foles, I think we've all seen Nick Foles does really good with a tight end for whatever reason. He really likes his tight ends. Jimmy Graham, though,
kind of hard to miss a really, really big target.
This is true. I don't understand the Jimmy Graham one, though, because he's older. He didn't do much of anything with the Packers. And you give him a 2-year, fully guaranteed $16 million deal.
Yeah, it's not like it's like a small contract by any means. It's pretty significant for his age and just his overall health. Why would you do that?
Yeah, and it's, again, especially considering you just picked up, with your top pick in the second round, another tight end. They have 10 tight ends on that roster. You can't keep them all. I mean, I don't know.
I mean, if anything, that's just a really expensive culture guy, I guess. Kind of like Jason Witten with the Raiders, but still, is that even worth it?
I don't think so. I think that was wasted money. I think you could have gotten. I mean, again, you can't necessarily think of the future, but let's say they didn't sign Jimmy Graham and they've got $8 million sitting around right now. Larry Warford just got cut by the Saints, one of the best guards in the league. He's sitting on the free agent market. If the Bears picked him up to improve that offensive line, then I think that changes the whole landscape of how their O-line is. I mean, obviously one player is not going to fix everything, but getting a guy like that in there, if you wouldn't have picked up Jimmy Graham and you had that money, I think will be a bigger, improvement than Jimmy Graham will be.
Oh, yeah, it would have been much better, because if you look at that, you have, a better than just garbage O-line, and it's not like they don't have weapons. They have Al Robinson, who still performs extremely well even after an ACL tear a couple years ago. You have Taylor Gabriel from the Falcons. He's fantastic. And you have a fresh David Montgomery waiting for you in the backfield. I mean, there's no reason why this team shouldn't be able to move the ball down the field. And I don't think Jimmy Graham exactly helps them out that much.
I think Taylor Gabriel got cut actually this offseason.
Oh, my thing. I'm not Taylor Gabriel. Tariq Cohen. That's what I meant.
Yeah. And then they got that other
same guy, right?
They got that other receiver that they drafted a couple years ago.
Anthony Miller.
Yeah. I like him. I think he could have a big year.
Right. So it's not like they're lacking any tools or anything. If anything, you should have just worked in your O line so you could have gotten the ball to your tools.
Yeah. I think in the draft, the one player I think could come in right away and do some good, Jalen Johnson, that they also got in the second round, the corner. I really like him. I think he's a little raw because I don't think he's had that much experience at corner. I believe he was he came in kind of late, but I think he's got a lot of high upside. I think that filled a desperate need they needed. They've kind of lost some corners recently, and I think he could come in and start right away. Overall,
yeah, because if anything, their defense was known for the front and not the back.
Right, right. And also, it like the difference between 2 years ago and last year was in the turnover department. The defense was not causing as many turnovers as it used to. I think putting him in there can really help with that. Uh, but I kind of want to ask you overall with their off season, with everything they've done, if you had to give it like a letter grade, what would you say?
Uh, well, I guess if I'm considering their worst, or I guess their biggest need was obviously the O line, and they didn't address it at all. So that's a big minus right there. The Nick Foles, even though I've definitely expressed that I like it overall, and I think he's a much better quarterback than Mitch Trubisky is, it's not like he's that much better. I just think he's like clearly better. That's about it. But it's not like it was a high bar to clear. Uh, Once again, Jimmy Graham, why you drafted Cole Kmet, which is fine. He was the highly sought after tight end and a really, really, really just low bunch of tight ends in the draft. I'm going to go with a C.
Yeah, I think I like the Jalen Johnson pick. I think that filled a need. I also like them getting Robert Quinn to pair with Khalil Mack. I think those two off the edge is going to be really nice. But I'm with you. I don't understand the Jimmy Graham pick, especially compared with the Cole Kmet pick. Just those two, you don't like why. And then Nick Foles, I mean, I kind of gave my reasoning on that one. They didn't improve the O line, which I think was their biggest need that they needed to do. I'm gonna go C plus, so we're pretty close on that. I think they improved like somewhat, but they could have definitely done more. I was kind of disappointed with their offseason because they have such a good defense, and I think if they just had the offense to complement it, they could be so much more competitive in this division. But I don't think they did enough.
Clearly not. They're going to be. I mean, I think you and I both have them going under 500 at the minimum.
Yeah. All right, so let's move on with our next team. We're going to discuss the Detroit Lions. I'll let you take this away. What would you like to say about them?
Well, if there's any coach in the division that's on the hot seat, I believe it's Matt Patricia.
Yep.
Even more so than Matt Nagy. I believe that this is his final year, and while I think that they improved overall, I mean they lost Darius Slay, obviously, which is a big loss, and they seem like they addressed it. Picking up Desmond Trufant from the Falcons and drafting Jeffrey Okudah. But even with their pretty decent offseason, given their schedule and everything, I think Patricia is definitely the one out of this whole NFC North group that's going to be looking for another job somewhere.
Yeah, I agree. He's definitely the one with the biggest hot seat right now. I think at least with me, and I think some would agree, the Lions have the talent. There's a lot of talent on that team, but I don't know if it's been just constant coaching changes or what, but they've just not been able to put it all together. I think Matthew Stafford's a very underrated quarterback in this league, but I still think his time there has been a big disappointment. But I also think it's because it's just the Detroit Lions have not been able to put it all together, and I think Patricia has not helped with that at all. Um, I think with how the whole Darius Slay thing went down, you could tell that locker room is not very happy right now. Um, but in terms of their additions, you mentioned the Trufant and Okudah pickups. I think that's a good way to help improve that defense a little bit. They got Danny Shelton and Jamie Collins, both former Patriots. I like both those pickups. And then they helped the offensive line by, I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name, Vaitai, I think is his last name.
Yeah, I didn't even bother writing it down. I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to they picked up a guy, and that was about it.
Yeah, the offensive tackle from the Eagles, I think that's going to be a good pickup. I kind of like their draft. I wanted to ask you, they picked up DeAndre Swift in the second round. What do you think about that addition?
I mean, I honestly can't tell. I really like DeAndre Swift, and he just no running back succeed in a Detroit Lions backfield. Like not since Barry Sanders. It's just not going to happen. I don't know why. I even thought Kerryon Johnson was talented enough, but clearly it didn't show. He did have that 100-yard rushing game. I think it all just comes out of the coaching staff. They just haven't been able to put it together. And while like DeAndre Swift, recent history would say that it's not going to work out well for him.
Yeah,
He's great. He's a great runner. He's a great pass catcher. I just don't know if it's going to translate by going to the Lions.
yeah, I'd like to see someone in terms of a running back do good there. They have Kerryon Johnson, who I think is really good, and I think his injuries kind of derailed him early on. But I mean, at least now, ideally on paper, you have Swift and Johnson both in the backfield, two very talented backs. But again, we've seen talented backs go to the Lions, and since Barry Sanders, they ain't done much of anything. So, that's one of those you just got to wait and see.
If anything, I would like it if they use both of them in some sort of schemes, that you can have one blocking and, one go for underneath pass catch from Matt Stafford. Maybe that helps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, if you look at the offense right now, I mean, you got Kenny Golladay, who I think is a more underrated receiver, but one of the best young ones in the game.
Yeah, he's fantastic, and he's not even into his prime yet.
Right. You've still got Marvin. Is that his name?
Yeah, Marvin Jones.
Yeah, you still got him over there, who is getting a bit older, but he's still very serviceable. You've got the tight end that you drafted in the first round last year, and now you've got these two running backs, and of course Stafford at the QB position. I think your O line is going to be a little bit improved. On paper it looks good, and I think the defense is a little bit improved too. But I mean, is it going to work out? How much improvement is there really going to be? That's more of a wait and see.
Even if they do show any kind of improvement, if they don't go above 500, I don't think Patricia's keeping his job. And if anything, all of this, slight improvement is just going to mean nothing because, another guy's going to come in and it's going to be a completely different scheme, a completely different way of running things. I mean, it just seems like this this organization is just like destined for turmoil.
Yeah, it's honestly, it kind of reminds me of the Falcons in a way that it seems they're just destined for mediocrity or below that. And it doesn't help that, I mean, they're in a division right now with the Packers and the Vikings that, I mean, that's kind of like one of the questions that I have. Are they even going to be able to compete with those teams? Like, can they show any signs of life?
I mean, if anything, they're competitive in most of their games. They started out well last year. I mean, you did have did they tie the Cardinals? Is that who it was?
Yeah.
They started out well last year, and it's just Matt Stafford isn't getting any younger. He was pretty durable up until last year, but they honestly could be looking at a QB change pretty soon, if not as soon as this offseason, the next offseason.
Yeah,
there were reports that they were trying to trade up to get a Tua.
I'd almost like to see Stafford in a situation like, heck, could you imagine Stafford getting placed with the Bears?
Oh, I would love that.
I mean, I'd just like to see Stafford with a better organization and a better overall team. I mean, that'd be phenomenal.
Could you see this happening since Patricia has the connection with the Patriots? Do you think Bill and him work out a trade for Matt Stafford?
Oh, please no.
You won't have to worry about taking for Trevor, I guess.
So sick of the Patriots. I mean, it would be a Belichick move for sure. Like, especially if it happened like everyone's thinking they're gonna go in with Stidham, and then like a week before the preseason, just be like, oh yeah, Stafford's going to the Patriots. Just mind blown.
So then we'll go to the Vikings next.
Yeah, we'll go to the Vikings. The Vikings are an interesting team because they're another team that seems very talented. Their offseason started off very interesting. Everyone knows about the Stephon Diggs situation. They traded him away to the Bills, gained a first-round pick, and that turned into Justin Jefferson. They extended Kirk Cousins for 2 more years. I think he showed some stuff in the playoffs, getting that win against the Saints. He still needs to win on Monday Night Football. So if the Vikings are playing on Monday Night Football, go ahead and chalk that one up as a loss because Kirk Cousins is the quarterback. Sorry.
Oh my god! For you bettors out there.
Yeah. I really liked their Michael Pierce addition. I think replacing Linval Joseph, who they lost, I think that's a very nice, plug and play run stuffing tackle. They also picked up Tajay Sharp, who, he's serviceable, I guess.
I like the Gladney pick.
Yeah, I think the draft went fantastic for them. It was like, look, we're just going to pick up all of our needs. We're going to pick up corner, receiver, offensive line. Those are our biggest needs. We're going to fill them. And they, ended up with so many picks. They picked up like 15 people. I like the Justin Jefferson pick. Gladney was great. Cleveland in the second round, a great pickup. Cam Dantzler, another corner. James Lynch, I love that they picked him up for defensive line depth. Troy Dye at linebacker. They just stockpiled picks, and I think they got several key contributors in their first year. I really like what they did. I think my biggest question with them is, they still lost some big guys. They lost Diggs, and I know Jefferson's coming in, but can he even reflect Diggs' production? Joseph is coming in. How does Michael Pierce go? They lost Everson Griffin, one of their biggest pass rushing options. How does that go? Can they cover their losses with all these picks? We'll see. What do you think?
I think they're sitting pretty well. You draft pretty well. You have so many picks. They obviously win the Bills trade. You did lose Stephon Diggs, but it seems like you've got his replacement already. He's young. He's kind of raw, but he's talented. I guess kind of the biggest question would be Kirk Cousins himself. He's always surrounded with this talent as far as I come, like with the Vikings team. It's just something doesn't click. He doesn't have that it factor or that moxie to, push him over the edge, especially in those big primetime games, when everyone's watching him. He did get the playoff win, but even then, that came on a kind of controversial call. With all of the pass interference issues.
Nah, I don't want pass interference.
I personally don't think so either, but clearly a lot of people did, and it became controversial. I think they still believe in Kirk since they gave him that extension, for $66 million. If anything, their window is open right now. They have to win now.
Yes, I agree. They're in a prime position to be able to win more, and they just need to do it. I think this is a good year for them to be able to win the division, and I think it really depends on how these young players step up, and can Kirk Cousins step up? He's got some tough games, that he's gonna be playing in, and I liked overall how he looked against the Saints. That throw in overtime to Adam Thielen was
fantastic.
Yeah, I think that's the best throw of his career. And I think that playoff win kind of gets a monkey off his back, being like, oh, he can't win the big games. He finally won one.
That probably earned him his extension, to be honest.
Yes. I think he played well, and he's got to take the next step, and he's not a young quarterback, but he's not old either. So, he can still show a lot of improvement, and I kind of hope he does. I'd like to see the Vikings do well.
Do you think Kirk Cousins is a bad or a good quarterback?
I think he's. I can't really name this off the absolute top of my head, but if I had to put him in terms of the rest of the quarterbacks in the league, I think he's a top 20 quarterback. I don't think he's bad. Good. Like if there's average and then above average, he's like, I think in the middle of those two. I think he's just barely above an average quarterback, but he's not like an above average quarterback. I think he's fine. He's serviceable. I think he can win you some games, but I don't necessarily think he's a big time franchise quarterback.
I kind of agree with you. I do think he's a franchise quarterback, and I think he's actually pretty good. He's fourth. He was fourth in passer rating last year of 107.3, which is higher than Mahomes, higher than Matt Ryan, and he's also fourth in completion percentage, which is 69.1. Obviously, having Kyle Rudolph and Adam Thielen, going up the middle, and Dalvin Cook helps a lot, but it's there. Even the numbers say it's there. It's just somehow not going all the way. But overall, I think he's good. My biggest question for the Vikings is going to be how losing the offensive coordinator affects them, and without having that offseason to help, prepare for the upcoming games.
Yeah, I mean that's
If
definitely.
anything, that would be my biggest worry about the Vikings. I think we both have them pretty high. I think we both have them going to the playoffs, but it's easy to see why they would crumble this year, especially losing their offensive mind, and they don't have any preparation.
Yeah, and I think that's an issue for a lot of teams this year is how different the offseason is going to be. But again, they have the talent, and I think they've got good coaching overall. So, I mean, they got the pieces. They just got to be able to put it all together.
Sound like the Falcons, right?
Let's not get started.
So last but not least, we got the Packers. And the obvious elephant in the room is their quarterback, Jordan Love.
Where do I start? So, like you said, the elephant in the room, the Packers, with their first round draft pick, picked Jordan Love. And they didn't just pick Jordan Love, they decided to trade up for Jordan Love, giving up a fourth round pick to pick up who many believe is their franchise quarterback of the future. And as most know, this is very similar to the whole Brett Favre situation back in 2005. I think Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre were about the same age when this happened. And I'll openly say, I had the Packers drafting Jordan Love in my mocks. What I didn't expect to happen was them to trade up for him.
They probably didn't really have to.
Yeah, that's always like a thing like, oh, you could have traded back, or, oh, hey, you didn't have to trade up for this person. Obviously, we don't know. Someone could have came back, traded back into the first round to get him. But either way, I don't know. Even though I had it mocked, it still kind of confuses me, especially the trading up part, because this is a team that, despite the fact that we can say their 13-3 record was a little fluky because, I mean, they were 8-1 in close games, but they were still 13-3. They still made it to the NFC Championship game, and even though the 49ers destroyed them, they still made it there. So you think you're just a couple pieces from the Super Bowl, and you choose your first-round pick as a quarterback? That kind of, I don't know.
That's kind of a sign that you're just ready to already give up on your window. It's clearly open. You went 13-3. You made it to NFC champ, and you did lose to San Francisco twice in pretty bad fashion. You would think you would just address, something to at least compete against San Francisco, which was your biggest competition last year. And looking ahead into this year, what would be any different?
Yeah, and it's one of those where if they would have addressed the receiver position, which is where a lot of people expected the Packers to go to get Rodgers more weapons, if they would have addressed that either later in the draft or in free agency, this would make sense. But in free agency, all they really did was they picked up Devin Funchess, but he had a season-ending injury with the Colts, so we didn't even see how he did. So that's a big question mark. That's the only receiver they picked up in free agency. And then in the draft, with their second-round pick, they took A.J. Dillon, the running back, who, I mean, on one end, Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams are both in contract years.
Mm-hmm.
There's a good chance they won't sign them both, and Aaron Jones might cost a bit, so they may not even want to re-sign him at all. So, that's a big question mark. But even then, I mean, it's just a running back. AJ Dillon's a power back. He doesn't offer much in the receiving, so that's questionable. And then you pick Josiah DeGuara, a tight end, not even like that much of a pass catching threat. He's more of a inline blocking tight end in the 3rd round, and that's just, I don't know. The Packers draft this year did not make sense to me.
I kind of like that one because I think the whole point of that was to address the O-line.
I mean,
Which granted wasn't that great, but wasn't exactly the worst.
like I respect, addressing the O-line. And obviously in the 6th round they picked offensive lineman. So, I mean, that's fine and all, but you're using a 3rd round pick on an inline blocking tight end. Like,
that's not even replacing, even the little bit that Jimmy Graham provided.
Yeah, and like I just think they could have gone and again, draft pundits and all these things, when they talk about, oh, you could have had better value had you picked something else. Everyone has their own board. But to me, I did not see. I don't even know where I had Josiah DeGuara on my tight end board at all. So I did not have him as a 3rd round grade. That's for sure.
Mm.
And I still think there were other players there you could have picked up outside of a tight end. And yes, they kind of
There's some
addressed
plenty
the
of
offensive
defensive players you could have taken there because it's not like the defense was that great last year. And once again, San Francisco was just tearing you up left and right.
Yeah, specifically in the run game. And another thing people thought they would address is the run defense. And in the 4th round, they picked up Kamal Martin, but that's a little late to pick up a linebacker. And in free agency, they got Christian Kirksey, which I think is a good pickup. But that's not going to fix it all. They did nothing really with the defensive line. So I don't know. The issue that I had in a general sense with the Packers offseason is, and, correct me if I'm wrong and depending on what you think, but if I'm looking at the Packers, like, at least I can say with the other teams in the division, I could look at them and say, you know what, I feel like, maybe they had a couple losses here and there, but I feel like they got better. Like, I could see in prime positions of need, they got better. I look at the Packers, and I don't think they got better. Like, I don't think they got worse necessarily, but I don't see how they got better.
Yeah, it's always worse when you get stagnant, especially when you have so many close games, last year that you did win, but those don't translate to the next year. And whenever you don't get better, your team gets figured out, your whole scheme and system gets figured out, and you're just opening yourself up to – it's always worse to just remain where you're at. Like, it's one thing if you're Patrick Mahomes and you're Andy Reid and you can just continue to just, do whatever that works, but – when you remain just stagnant and you don't do anything to change or improve, it might not look like you're being worse, but staying where you're at is an issue itself.
Yes, I agree. And I think, bouncing off kind of what you said, when they played the 49ers, and they played them twice and got blown out twice, the run defense looked terrible twice. I think the 49ers have made a blueprint for the Packers. And if you look at how each team is structured right now, the Vikings with Dalvin Cook, the Bears with Montgomery, if they even decide to run him, hopefully they do, and the Lions, they just picked up
all you got to do for the
Swift.
Bears is call out Matt Nagy, and then he'll address it the next week, apparently.
Maybe. But if you look at all 3 of these teams, you could see them with a focus in the running game. And I think if they do that, they're striking right at the heart of that Packers defense, right at a weakness. And I think it gives all of them a leg up this upcoming year to where, hey, the Packers didn't really help their run defense. Let's focus on the run, and I think they're very beatable.
And this all just circulates back around to this Jordan Love pick. Like, I get why you're trying to plan for the future, and I see how people are comparing it to the Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers situation, But even then, at that time, this is what the biggest difference is that Aaron Rodgers openly came out and said that he wants to stay in Green Bay and he wants to play, into his into his 40s. So he still has another 2 or 3 years at the minimum, if just going off of what he said. But entering the draft where they picked Aaron Rodgers, Brett Favre, he was threatening of retiring. They had to make that pick. They didn't have to do this right here. They were still in their window, and you didn't have to do it, which is like, it just boggles my mind. Like, you don't have to do this. Brett Favre was threatening to retire, and ultimately, yeah, he did end up saying, a couple more years and then going to Minnesota. But that's what makes these situations different. Aaron Rodgers isn't ready to retire. He's not ready to leave, and he's openly said he wants to stay and he wants to work things out. And then you do this, and given the history of Aaron Rodgers and what he said last week, he was open about not liking the pick, and it kind of surprised them. And he even said that he was going to stay in Green Bay, but now it's looking like he's probably going to go somewhere else.
Here's something I want to bring up, and this is me trying to find a little, understanding with the pick. So if we're looking at Aaron Rodgers, there's a big debate. When Brett Favre, or when Aaron Rodgers got picked up, when Brett Favre was the starting quarterback, people could see Brett Favre and obviously see that he was declining. And there's a debate going on right now: is Aaron Rodgers declining? So here are some stats. So from 2009 to 2014, Aaron Rodgers had a quarterback rating above 100 all of those years. And if we're going on recent time, 2014, he had 4,381 passing yards, 38 touchdowns, 5 picks. 2015, 3,821 yards, 31 touchdowns, 8 picks. 2016, 4,428 yards, 40 touchdowns, 7 picks. 2017 was the year he got hurt, so we'll not count about that one. But in the past 2 years, if we look at it, 2018 still threw for a lot of yards, 4,442, but only 25 touchdown passes and 2 picks, a 97.6 quarterback rating. 2019, this past year, just over 4,000 yards at 4,002, 26 touchdown passes, so still not many touchdown passes, 4 picks, 95.4 quarterback rating. So if you look at that, he's not, like, the decline, you can kind of see it, but it's not nearly as severe as when Brett Favre was there. So when you're looking at this pick, it makes you wonder, how long is Jordan Love going to sit? The Packers have an out with Rodgers' contract in 2 years. So
that's the minimum.
Yes, the minimum. And even then, they're still going to have like $19 million in dead cap if they do that. So I think it depends on how well Jordan Love develops. But again, if he's not getting in any game time, you really can't tell, because he can look so good in practice, but if you don't put him in a game, how are you going to know? So I understand looking for the future, but with Aaron Rodgers, I still think Aaron Rodgers still has several good years left. And I think you have a window right now to win, and just picking Love up in the first round, I think, does not help your circumstance.
And I don't even know exactly how much of those stats are actually, like, how much worth they have to them. And, stats do help and stuff. But once again, we have Aaron Rodgers, who openly discussed Mike McCarthy at the end. And he was just purposely throwing the ball away if he didn't see what he wanted, or he didn't even like the play. So exactly how much of those stats are exactly an actual decline, or does Aaron Rodgers just being a little asshole and not doing what his coach wants to do? I don't know. The injury probably has something to do with it, but if you see with new head coaches coming to a different system, there as a little rocky start, Matt LaFleur last year, but I just don't know if there is an actual decline, just given what we know about throwing away the ball and just calling off plays, at the line without Mike McCarthy knowing, and just being open to his own players and right next to him, saying, "Hey, I'm just gonna let you know I'm not gonna do that. Go do this, and I'll give you the ball."
Well, I think
There's just too much question to that for me to think that. Yes, he is older, and he's definitely not as mobile as he used to be, but I don't really know how much of a decline there is just with that, just for knowing that.
I think at if I'm looking at some logic, at least with the rest of the draft, going past the Jordan Love pick, I think it's very clear that Matt LaFleur wants to have a deep focus on the running game and not put so much on Aaron Rodgers, which I think is smart because, like you said, he is getting older, and even though I still think he's got a good bit left in the tank, age catches up to everybody eventually. So
Mhm.
I think putting less of a load on Aaron Rodgers can only help the Packers. So I guess that kind of helps the Dillon and DeGuara pick, and then the 3 O linemen they ended up taking. I still kind of wonder though, with the lack of helping out the run defense, again, just how much better did they get? Um,
Well,
and
how much
so
worse does Aaron Rodgers look last year, given that his number one and what his only target is? Devontae Adams was out for a couple games. How much did that play into it?
yeah, I mean, and I think like the second leading receiver or the second in targets was Aaron Jones. So if your running back is your second leading receiver, basically, that's a telltale sign that there's something wrong. You
Unless
need
you're seeing
another weapon. Okay, well, yeah, but there's still there's still an issue with that even in Carolina. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I understand. I love Christian McCaffrey, but eventually he can't take the whole offense on his back.
It seems like we're talking a lot of crap. I mean, given because the offseason moves are questionable and controversial, but I think you and I both still have this team being a fringe 10-win team. And I personally have them edging out the Vikings, but I still have both of them being playoff teams.
Well, let's go ahead and go straight into that. To kind of close out this episode, I say let's go through our predictions for how we think this division will go. So
Okay.
who do you got going last in the division?
Last, I still have the Lions, but not far behind. Lions, I have them going 5-11, and the Bears following them 6-10.
I could see that definitely happening. I got the Bears personally going 5-11. They're my last place team, and I got the Lions just in front of them, but I have them going a lot better. At 7-9 is kind of the record that I have for them. A vast improvement. Just because I think at some point the talent has got to show on the field. I don't know when it's going to happen, but I think the Lions are talented. I don't really like Matt Patricia, but eventually talent has to win out at some point. You think?
Every Jacksonville team ever.
I mean, it went out that one time. You got when they made it to the AFC Championship and just
Which they should have won, but that's a different conversation.
yeah, another conversation another time. So I'm assuming
Well,
from
if
what
we're
you
going
said,
with this, if we're looking at my record for the Lions, Matt Patricia's definitely getting fired. But for your prediction, 7-9, is it a bad 7-9 or a good 79? Do you think he's going to get fired?
um, it I'd have to look at the schedule again. I have them splitting with the Packers. Um, actually, I think I have them splitting with most of the NFC North. Um, but I think it could be a thing where they are like a pretty bad record middle of the way. Patricia gets fired, and then they kind of have a bit of a win streak near the end, kind of like the Falcons last year. Um,
Unfortunately.
yes, but I do agree with you. I think one way or another, even with a 7-9 record, I do think Patricia's got to go. I don't think he's the right fit in Detroit.
Okay, so then that leaves us with the Vikings and Packers, and just like with our Lions and Bears picks, we switched, didn't we? because I have the Vikings and Packers tying for 10-6, but the Packers getting the edge.
Yeah, I have the Packers going 10-6, and I have the Vikings going 11-5, just barely edging them out with one more win. I just think the difference at this point is I think the Vikings just had a better offseason. I think they improved more. I think they added a lot of depth, some much needed depth at key positions, specifically in the secondary. And I think I have the Packers and Vikings splitting in the season.
Yeah, same.
And I think the Vikings just win just one more game.
Well, the reason why I give the Packers the edge is because of this whole offseason. The Vikings lost their offensive coordinator. He wanted to be the head coach of the Browns now. And they did draft really well. They had a lot of draft picks. The team's getting younger, but they don't have an offseason to prepare or get ready. And once again, they're going to have a new offensive scheme now. But where the Packers, even though we're kind of hard on their offseason and their draft, they're returning a lot of the same players, and that window is still open for them. And that's why I give the Packers the edge.
All right, well, I definitely think that we can both agree. We got two of them going into the playoffs.
Yep.
So, and I think especially with the extended playoff, the extra seed, I think that'll help. But yeah, I think it could be a very competitive division, especially at the top. But yeah, it should be a fun division to watch this year.
Well, before we're into this, I'm going to make a little prediction here. So, the minimum on Aaron Rodgers' contract for release for him to stay in Green Bay is 2 years, right?
Yep.
Well, Minnesota just extended Kirk Cousins for 2 years. I think Aaron's going to leave Green Bay and go to Minnesota and follow that Brett Favre. How insane would that be?
That would be pretty crazy. Yeah, I think that'd be almost a flat dig to the organization.
I could see that happening because he's been pretty open and critical of them.
I mean, yeah, and there's been some talk in the media that apparently Matt LaFleur and Aaron Rodgers don't really like each other very much anyways. Again, there's not much ground for that to stand on, but hey, when there's smoke, there's fire. So if that's any indication of their relationship, then I could definitely see Aaron Rodgers, especially after this Jordan Love pick, finding a way to get out of there. And once he does, heck, what better could he do than go into the Vikings and, maybe taking the division right from them?
I would love to see a last dance treatment to just Aaron Rodgers' whole career, like from beginning to end, being behind Brett Favre and then ending, wherever it goes. Because either way, all the behind the scenes talk throughout his career is pretty insane.
Yeah, he's definitely had a very interesting path, and I think most would agree that Aaron Rodgers has been one of the most talented quarterbacks of our time. And I think some would argue that he probably should have more than just one ring, based off some teams that he's been a part of. And it's another thing that it's hard to imagine, like, what other Packers teams could be if they just had a defense at the time. Because Aaron Rodgers, for the longest time, like, that offense was, like, so dynamic, but their defense couldn't defend anybody.
So if they actual just had, cheddar cheese.
Yeah. So if they just had, like, any type of defense, how much better the Packers could have been in, like, the last decade.
Well, I think this is a good way to end the episode right here.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, so thank you, everyone, for listening on another episode of JJ Talks, and we will see y'all next time.
Bye.